Probably because it stole its synopsis from Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo. A Fistful of Dollars is far and away the weakest reputation of Sergio Leone's trilogy. Blues trilogy. Now, to be fair, even if this film wasn't a knockoff of a Kurosawa classic, it is easy to imagine A Fistful of Dollars nevertheless being considered probably the least interesting of these three films. That being said, it is, I think, a lot stronger than its reputation as a mere knockoff would otherwise suggest. I often think that Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns are of such a high caliber that it has casual film fans, exploring American, Hollywood westerns, then the Leone films around the same time. They think, oh, I think I prefer spaghetti westerns. This is precarious. I mean, a lot of the other best spaghetti westerns tend to be, there's some decent existential fare here and there, although, which is not unlike some of the new Hollywood westerns which would pop up in America, such as Peter Fonda's The Hired Hand, or Bad Company, films like that. But what you had is, a lot of kind of exploitation fare, like by directors like Sergio Solima or Sergio Corbucci. Like they're fun films and they're well made but they're interesting in the way that some of the giallos were interesting. Some of these directors, some giallo directors made spaghetti westerns in the 60s and Pepper before that. And this brings me on to something else I wanted to discuss. Leone ripping off Kurosawa brought Leone into his own. Leone's Pepler are not very good in the grand scheme of Pepler. I know you're thinking, oh, how good is the Peplum going to be? Fair call, but like some of these directors, including Bava, Alberto Di Martino, Antonio Margheriti, who made, I think, what many people consider good horror films in the 70s or 60s, later part of the 60s, that they made above average and quite interesting Pepler. And so it was interesting to note that Sergio Leone's two entries in the genre are not particularly, I think, memorable examples of the form. I've seen quite a number of them. I don't know if I ought to be embarrassed about that. Yeah, I ought to be. Anyway, what we have, though, is Leone mimicking Kurosawa. He probably watched the film he was knocking off, Yojimbo, 5 times, and in learning how to communicate Kurosawa via this context, it gave him the confidence to really transform what could have been an otherwise standard affair for a few dollars more. I mean, obviously we have the presence of Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef, but it's the handling from Leone which really elevates that subsequent film into a major classic, and then of course The Good, the Bad and the Ugly into one of the 20 most beloved films of all time, possibly to this day. But it stands as an incredibly entertaining film and one of the most impressive of the spaghetti westerns, and I suspect anyone who's seen over a dozen or 2 dozen of spaghetti westerns will come to agree that this is almost definitely the case. Also, I think it's important to note that there are some who somewhat dispute the allegation that A Fistful of Dollars was a knockoff of Yojimbo. British critic, I'm reading this out from the Free Encyclopedia, Sir Christopher Frayling identifies 3 principal sources for A Fistful of Dollars, partly derived from Kurosawa's samurai film Yojimbo, partly from Dashiell Hammett's novel Red Harvest, 1929, but most of all from Carlo Goldoni's 18th century play Servant of Two Masters. Leone has cited these alternate sources in his defense. He claims a thematic debt for both Fistful and Yojimbo to Carlo Goldoni's Servant of Two Masters, the basic premise of the protagonist playing 2 camps against each other. Leone asserted that this rooted the origination of Fistful Yojimbo in European and specifically Italian culture. The Servant of Two Masters plot can also be seen in Hammett's detective novel Red Harvest. The continental op hero of the novel is significantly a man without a name. Leone himself believed that Red Harvest had influenced Yojimbo. Kurosawa's Yojimbo was inspired by an American novel of the series noir, so I was really taking the story back home again. Leone also referenced numerous American westerns in the film, most notably Shane, 1953, and My Darling Clementine, 1946, both of which differ from Yojimbo and, were released before Yojimbo and released in 61. Of course, if you play them back to back, the similarities are very, very striking. And in this case, I don't mind because it elevated the film, makes it a more exciting and interesting viewing experience, I think. Thanks again, friends. Appreciate it immensely.